Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Consented Narrative. We'll be looking at The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And as I said in last week's episode, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, this is not a book that I would have necessarily picked up. It was recommended. I saw loads of people buying it on the Book Hangout Club on Facebook, and in fact this was another one like the Bridget Collins one that someone bought me from my wish list anonymously through that club over Christmas, and I got round to reading it and reviewing it, as you see, a fair few months down the line. This book, it is a tough read at parts, because essentially it starts off with our main character Nora. Basically her life goes from bad to worse, and she commit suicide, but at the stroke of midnight, she's not quite dead, she's not quite alive. She goes into this library in her mind, basically, and she's got a librarian there, and each book is an alternative universe where if she'd decided to take up swimming for the Olympics because she was training and then her dad died and she stopped, if she decided to continue with that, if she'd married the person that she'd broken off the engagement with, if she'd gone away, if she'd gone on a date with someone that she, instead of sticking with in this bad relationship. It's all these different universes, and when she feels comfortable in one of her own body, in her own sort of like iteration of this universe, she can stay there forever, and then her old life would just kind of end where it ends. And it is just such a beautifully written, very respectable book. And honestly, it just raises, literally it says on the bottom, which raises the ultimate question: with infinite choices, what is the best way to live? And you can't say what is the best way to live. And it got me. It genuinely did. At points I was just sat there going, I know what it's like when you have a day where just everything goes wrong, and then that snowballs into another day that goes wrong, and then it snowballs and snowballs and it's just, when you see this written down and it's done so well, and then how it ends is just so beautiful in how they deal with this. But it's about her going through all these different lives and figuring out what suits her best, what choices were best. And it's just so sweet. It genuinely is. It is a bit of a tough read if you do deal with these kind of thoughts. But it's a good read because it helps you come to terms with, okay, which version of you would be the best version? Is it the version you are now? Is it a version that you regret? And it's looking at the regrets in your life as well. Like, okay, I regret, not going off to this uni. And it's little things like that. Like, for example, obviously, if I hadn't ended up at Hull Uni, I wouldn't have got together with my husband. I wouldn't have moved to Leeds. I wouldn't be where I am now. But that's not a regret for me. I'm happy I went to Hull Uni. But it's little things like that going, okay, so if I hadn't have done this, where would I be? Would that life be better? Am I living a bad life? Do you know what I mean? And it's nice. It's nicely written. It deals with it so well, and you really care for the main character, and you genuinely feel her desperation as well. And you just kind of sat there going, do you know what? I would recommend this book in a heartbeat. I am so glad that someone bought this for me. I'm so glad that, that I gave it a go, because as I said, it's not my normal book. I would not read a book where in the first couple of chapters the person commits suicide. That's not where I would go, and I'm glad I did. And it gets a 4 out of 5 from me. It would get a 5 out of 5, but there is a whole chapter where all you're dealing with is all these different lives that she's going into, and I just got bored halfway through, like being like, do you know what? Can you just move it on a bit? But it's so interesting, and definitely please give it a read. Please leave it below in the comments if you have read this book and you enjoyed it. If there's any books that you'd like me to review, again, leave them below in the comments. And thank you so much for your continued support, guys. I'm slowly but surely getting there, so thank you so much, and have a fantastic day, and remember to always keep it contento.